New York City just made history. Zohran Mamdani, 34 years old, Democratic Socialist and with a Muslim immigrant background, is now mayor of America's largest city. But his win wasn't just about big ideas or slick campaigning. It was about connecting deeply with everyday New Yorkers, building grassroots momentum, and turning that into a mandate. Now, will he be able to deliver on his promises once he's sworn in January of next year? Let's find out.
On January 1st, I will be sworn in as the mayor of New York City.
Let's zoom in for a minute on how Mamdani pulled this off, because you don't meet a former governor like Andrew Cuomo in a city like New York without doing something different. First up, debt relief for taxi drivers. In 2022, as a state assembly member, Mamdani joined a 15-day hunger strike alongside the New York Taxi Workers Alliance to push for debt relief for taxi workers in New York. The campaign succeeded in brokering a deal with the city officials and lenders. Then Mamdani championed a fare free bus pilot in several boroughs, which increased ridership and strengthened his reputation as someone fighting for the working class and transit-dependent New Yorkers. His fundraiser was built on thousands of small donations, averaging about $80 rather than big money coming from corporations. And alongside formal campaigning, Mamdani visited neighborhoods that the big establishment candidates ignored. The culturally diverse corners of Queens, bodegas, halal carts, temple events in Ridgewood, and many other community centers. He publicly engaged across faith lines and introduced Diwali as a holiday, building trust beyond the usual progressive base. His movement tapped into young people, renters, immigrants, and working-class neighborhoods. They felt he was speaking their language: housing, transit, cost of living, and that coalition is what gave him the turnout edge. In short, his win was less about slick ads and more about standing beside people who felt that they'd been left out. And when you do that in a city like New York, you can win. What Mamdani's victory represents is bigger than New York, though. He ran on fare-free buses, rent freezes, massive affordable housing, a $30 minimum wage by 2030. These aren't tweaks, they're structural change. And when he clinched the Democratic nomination and then the general election, it sent ripples through the Democratic Party. Analysts described it as part of a generational shift. And it's true. Mamdani's story is part of a larger wave of progressive candidates rising across the US. Not just symbolic, but actually winning and governing. For example, Musab Ali in Jersey City, who is Pakistani-American, 28 years old, and running for mayor on similar issues: housing, transit, anti-corruption. Then Umar Fateh in Minneapolis, who's Somali-American. He's a state senator and pushing for a housing and climate agenda. Then Ayesha Mir, also in Minneapolis, Muslim woman, youngest council VP, showing governance, not just campaigning. Then finally, Ghazala Hashmi in Virginia, first Muslim woman in the state Senate, flipping a Republican seat on education, climate, and healthcare. Together, these figures show representation plus policy plus power. They're shifting what progressive leadership looks like in the US. But if Mamdani's rise is a new chapter, then the fight is already on. President Donald Trump publicly attacked Mamdani, calling him a communist and threatening to cut federal funding to New York if he won. A legal analysis noted that the president cannot easily or unilaterally cut federal funding because the Congress controls appropriations. But even the threat itself does chill city politics, business confidence, and federal and local cooperation. During his victory speech, Mamdani waved at the critics.
If anyone can show a nation betrayed by Donald Trump how to defeat him, it is the city that gave rise to him.
But now comes the hardest part, that is governing. Mamdani inherits a city under pressure. Housing shortages, transit woes, economic inequality, and powerful real estate and finance complex. And yes, a federal government ready to push back. He faces dual tests. Can he turn ideas into policy, coalitions, budgets, and laws? And can he survive national opposition and still produce results? I broke this down in last week's episode of Dossier with Ayesha, and I've linked it in the description if you want to know more. But when it comes to progressive politics in the US, consider Michelle Wu in Boston. She ran boldly and then governed effectively. Free transit routes, climate zoning, tenant productions. She proved that progressive governance can work. And if Mamdani pulls that off in New York, which is 5 boroughs and twice the complexity, he could rewrite urban politics in the US. The Democratic Party is also shifting. One side says stay moderate, appeal to the center. The other says meet people's needs head on. Housing, wages, climate, transit. Mamdani's victory is a test case for that second vision. And beyond party politics, it's a cultural signal. The children of immigrants, once on the margins, are now defining what leadership looks like. That's not just a rejection of America, it's a fulfillment of it. New York has always been a stage for what could be America's future. Zohran Mamdani's victory as a mayor isn't just a New York story, it's a possible national story. If he turns the upfront promise of solidarity with taxi drivers, renters, transit riders into concrete change, then this moment matters beyond city limits. Donald Trump will be watching, the business lobbies will be watching, the Democratic Party will be watching, and Zohran Mamdani as mayor will tell us whether a new generation, younger, more diverse, more global in its outlook, can actually make New York City an example of what democracy should look like.